Hello, I'm Full Paragon, and welcome to the Konosuba Fantastic Days Global Tier List video. Currently, there are 56 4-star characters in Konosuba Fantastic Days, not counting all of the 3-star characters that have been added. In this video, we're going to take a look and see where they all rank. Before we get started, we're going to talk about what this tier list is, what it isn't, and what my goals for this video are. First of all, this is not a team building guide. A tier list can't give a detailed explanation on how to build a team, especially not for Arena in Konosuba Fantastic Days. This is also not an objective unit power ranking. While some units may be individually strong, what matters more is their place in the meta and how they fit into different teams and synergize with other units, not how strong they are in a vacuum. What this tier list is a reflection of the meta. The tier list reflects the meta, not the meta the tier list. This tier list looks at the unit's usage in Arena in Konosuba Fantastic Days. This is meant to be a simple visual guide to the top 1K usage in Arena. I'm not looking at how units are used in the lower rankings of Arena, only at how they are used by the top players. Additionally, I primarily focus on 4-star units, with a few key 3-star units thrown in. A small disclaimer here, this tier list is biased toward units that were widely obtained by many players. The biggest culprit here is Emilia, who, due to being a welfare unit during the Danmachi collab, was widely obtained by many players in max skilled, causing her to see higher usage rates in Arena. Conversely, certain units, who were in banners that were not widely pulled on for a variety of reasons, will be placed at a lower tier due to having a lower usage rate. Finally, and most importantly, I am only factoring in Arena, not EX Arena, Story Mode, or Event Bosses. While those are all important parts of the game, this tier list is only concerned with a unit's performance in Arena. For this tier list, I have broken it up into 6 different tiers. The highest tier is the Triple S tier. These are the meta queens who dominate nearly every arena, and you will see on just about every team in the top 1000. Next is S tier. These are units that dominate at least one arena, and you will see on a large number of teams in the top 1000. The next tier is the A tier. These units see high usage for at least one arena and will be seen in many of the top 1000 teams, but aren't quite as dominant and don't have as large a share of the meta. Next are the B tier units. Occasionally they will show up in the top teams, but largely these are off-meta units. The C tier is composed of weak units that rarely see any use on a large scale, only showing up in a small handful of teams. And last is the D tier. These units are completely garbage, and also La Latina, and rarely show up on teams at all except as a joke, and only then in the last slot. I'll touch on each of these tiers, although I will be focusing a majority of my time on the top tier teams with only minimal time spent discussing the lower tiers. First up, let's talk about our meta queens and why they rule the meta. The first of our queens is Maid Megumin, Queen of Waves and Buffs for mage teams. She is a limited unit who premiered during the ReZero collab. The first reason that Maid Megumin is so strong is that she has incredibly powerful wave clear. Both of her skills are AoE abilities. Importantly, they're also of the light element, which means that no enemies will be able to resist them. This allows her to easily clear out waves in Arena, as well as farm gauge for herself to allow her to get up her ultimate. Another reason that Maid Megumin is so strong is that both her abilities provide team buffs. Her first ability provides a magic attack buff to your entire team. Importantly, this gives Megumin an increase to her own magic damage, boosting her second skill's damage, as well as increasing her ultimate damage, and, if you're running other mages, team damage. Her second ability is an agility buff. Agility buffs are, at this time, perhaps the most valuable buff. This is because agility not only increases the rate at which you are able to use basic attacks, but it also has the effect of increasing how fast you are able to fill your ultimate gauge, allowing you to use your very important ultimates more frequently. And lastly, Megumin has the advantage of blowing herself up and bowing out early, allowing a main DPS or healer to come in. Some new players may consider this to be a disadvantage as they are effectively killing one of their units, but what this really allows for is to have a specialist come in, clear out your waves, buff your team, and then leave, and then have one of your units who provides more consistent damage over the long term come in and do their job. All these factors together have turned Maid Megumin into a perennial for just about every single arena. Over the course of the tier list, you will hear me say many times This Megumin is not as effective as Maid Megumin in many circumstances, but still is of niche use. This is because Maid Megumin is an overwhelming generalist who is so good at her job that she is able to perform at the top level in just about every single arena, pushing other units out of the meta through her own dominance. And because of the buffs that she gives, specifically the magic attack buffs, Maid Megumin is also a pillar of the mage meta, allowing mages to consistently be the top performing team in nearly every single arena. Our other meta queen is Christmas Wiz, who is largely considered to be the queen of boss control. Christmas Wiz possesses a gauge fill attack, which allows her to both act as a DPS as well as a support for your team by increasing your entire team's ultimate gauge fill rate. The second key factor in Christmas Wiz's dominance of the meta is her incredible self-sustain, both from her basic ability and her weapon. Wiz as a character has perhaps the best single personal weapon in the entire game. This personal weapon gives Wiz a high chance to absorb attacks, recovering a majority of the damage that was dealt to her as HP. Her basic abilities also heal herself, and when combined with her weapon's passive ability, this means that Wiz is almost impossible for bosses to take down. She's able to stay on the field, continuing to provide support and damage for the entire arena without players having to worry about timing heals or defensive buffs for her. Wiz also has the best ultimate in the game. I would go so far as to call this ultimate broken. Wiz's ultimate does two things that every single team desperately wants. First, it increases the entire team's damage by debuffing the boss's magic defense. Wiz is able to further support her team by increasing everyone's damage whenever a magic attack is used. Second, her ultimate also debuffs the boss's agility. Debuffing agility is, at this time, the most important debuff that can be applied to a boss. By slowing down a boss, you're able to skip many mechanics, effectively meaning that your team is able to do its own thing without having to worry about what the boss is going to be doing. By the same token, you're also decreasing the amount of incoming damage for your team, further reducing a reliance on a healer. Wiz herself becomes nearly immortal because she's not taking any damage, and she's healing the little damage that does get through. This also means that you're often able to skip running a healer entirely, focusing more on increasing your team's damage. All of these things combined means that Wiz is used in every single arena, save for Lightning Arena when her fire type attacks are resisted by the boss. Even in arenas where her water type ultimate is used, Christmas Wiz is always the best option for every single team. As I mentioned, individual unit strength is not as important as how well the unit synergizes with the meta and with other top units. In this case, in addition to both being phenomenally strong, Christmas Wiz and Maid Megumin not only synergize with each other very well, they also synergize with other top units extremely well. Christmas Wiz boosts ultimate gauge fill rate, something that Maid Megumin desperately craves, as well as other mages, because their strength primarily comes from them using their ultimates to buff themselves and their team. Maid Megumin also synergizes extremely well with Christmas Wiz. She provides an early magic attack buff, something that Christmas Wiz lacks, allowing even her early attacks to hit even harder. She also provides an agility buff, something that mages typically struggle with, as while their basic attacks are powerful, they do tend to be on the slow side. Because Megumin and Wiz complement each other extremely well as complementing the mages that make up the majority of the meta, they are at the absolute pinnacle of the Konosuba Fantastic Days meta. They have thoroughly earned their place as a meta queen, and both of them belong in the triple S tier. Next up, we'll take a look at the S tier. These are element-defining adventurers that so overshadow their element that almost every single team in the top 1000 will be using them, and they completely define the makeup of teams, warping the meta around themselves. Even breaking into the top 1000 teams without one of these adventurers is an impressive feat due to how powerful they are compared to any possible alternatives. The first of the S tier is another Wiz, Lightning Wiz, also known as Summer Wiz or SS Wiz. The reason that she is in the S tier is she neatly fills the gap that Christmas Wiz has, namely that Christmas Wiz is ineffective against water-based enemies due to her primarily having fire-type attacks. even though Lightning Wiz's kit isn't quite as effective as Christmas Wiz, she more than makes up for it by having lightning attacks which are effective against these water-type enemies. Her kit is still very strong. She possesses 2 single-target abilities, which allow her to deal large damage against the boss. One of her skills also debuffs enemy defense, although this is largely overshadowed by her ultimate, which provides a more powerful version of this debuff. She still continues to have all the strengths that Christmas Wiz does in regards to her ult, both slowing the boss's attacks and increasing her team damage. Her self-sustain and weapons ability to keep her alive continues to be incredibly relevant. Overall, Lightning Wiz is a cornerstone of the lightning element, and getting into the top 1,000 teams without her is a challenge. In the light element, we have the original Yunyun, also known as Light Yunyun. Yunyun deals absolutely absurd amounts of light damage, in large part thanks to the fact that her ultimate is also of the light element. Her ultimate also provides a powerful tier 3 magic attack buff. Yunyun overall is a key adventurer in many teams because of this powerful buff. Because of this, and the fact that her weapon boosts light damage, Yunyun is an adventurer who is able to deal consistent, large amount of light damage, and she is a key to nearly all successful light element teams. There is a slight caveat that a 3-star welfare Yunyun can perform nearly as well as this 4-star. However, the 4-star is still the superior alternative, and teams with her will have an immediate and obvious advantage over teams that are using the welfare. Because of this, Yunyun is placed into the S tier. The original Arue, also known as Dark Arue, is the next S tier adventurer. Arue is able to deal large amounts of damage in a short window due to the incredibly high multipliers on her skills. They have long cooldowns to go along with this, but over time, because of how high the damage is, she will still average out to be one of the strongest options in Dark. Her defense down on her ult can occasionally be helpful. However, if you are running Wiz alongside of her, it isn't as relevant because the defense downs will not stack and only override each other. Her ult is of the Dark element, and combined with the rest of her kit, means that Arue deals the most damage of any adventurer in Dark. Ranking without using Dark Arue during arenas where that element is favored becomes increasingly difficult due to how centralizing she is for the metagame. Her trials are also excellent, and her weapon will further boost dark damage, allowing Arue to further stand out. Due to all these factors, Arue is placed in the S tier. In the wind element, we have original flavor Rin, also known as Wind Rin. She's kind of the opposite of Arue in that her skills have low cooldowns and low damage multipliers, but because of her ability to spam them, her damage averages out to be quite high over the course of an arena. Her ult is similar to Yunyun's in that it boosts magic attack for your entire team. It also has the further benefit of boosting Rin's own agility. The buff duration on Rin's ult isn't quite as long as the buff duration on Yunyun's. However, because the agility up that she gives herself increases how fast she fills her ultimate gauge, the coverage on her ultimate is roughly comparable to Yunyun's. In fact, once fully trialed and with her weapon equipped, which has the further benefit of increasing her agility, with a single gauge fill, usually from Christmas Wiz, Rin is able to maintain nearly 100% uptime on a tier 3 magic attack buff for her entire team. This makes Rin by far the strongest option in Wind, to the point where if you don't have a 4-star Wind Rin, the next best alternative is a 1-star, which is still Rin, due to how powerful the coverage of her ultimate buff is. Her 4-star, however, is vastly superior to the 1-star, and players who use the 4-star Rin will have a much easier time ranking, and she will continue to make up the majority of teams in the top 1,000 for Wind Arena for the foreseeable future. Last but certainly not least is Emilia, who is the favored adventurer in the water element. Emilia has a large advantage over other adventurers in the S tier because she was given to players for free. And out of all the adventurers in the S tier, Emilia is by far the most likely to show up in other arenas. This is also due to her kit. Emilia is not primarily a damage-dealing adventurer, but rather a support adventurer. Her kit includes an ultimate gauge fill and a heal, as well as an ultimate that boosts your team's defense for both physical and magic attacks. However, Do not be fooled. Even though Emilia is billed as a support and a healer and uses a rod instead of a staff, Emilia is a key part of mage meta. Her ability to fill your team's ultimate gauge allows you to maintain buffs from your ultimates even better, as well as the fact that her ultimate increases survivability, reducing the number of actions that will need to be devoted to healing your team, which are actions that are not damaging the boss and boosting your score. The biggest problem that Emilia has is that her trials are rather lackluster, and she does not have a personal weapon that boosts her damage like the other adventurers on this list. The water rod does somewhat make up for this and does allow Emilia to deal fairly competitive damage, and in Water Arena, it is nearly impossible to rank without employing Emilia, as her damage and support ability is second to none, especially in that element. Altogether, these are the 5 adventurers that make up the S tier: Lightning Wiz, Light Yunyun, Dark Arue, Wind Rin, and Emilia, who is a water mage. Each of them is incredibly centralizing to their own element, and importantly, they have powerful synergies that allow you to build a team around them. As you might have noticed, they all deal magic damage and they are all mages, hence mage meta. Importantly, they are all very effective when used with the most powerful units, Christmas Wiz and Maid Megumin. Next up, we have the A tier, the rest of the best. These are solid adventurers who tend to be best in slot, but they are easier to replace, even though they are still quite powerful. Currently, they are nearly all mages because they synergize the best with the adventurers that make up the triple S and S tiers. This time I'm going to go through by element, not by individual adventurers. We'll start off with Light, and in Light, first we have RP Arue. She has strong, consistent light damage thanks to her double single target attacks. She also debuffs defense, both with one of her skills and with her ultimate. Although again, if you're running an adventurer like Wiz who can also debuff defense, it's usually best to go with her first ultimate because it will deal increased damage. Next, we have Original Iris. Iris continues to hang on despite being a physical unit in a mage's world. This is because Iris is best at being in the last slot, coming in at the last moment in an arena, and then using one or perhaps 2 of her skills and hitting extremely hard, something that she doesn't require buffs to pull off. In the Dark Element, there are no 4-star adventurers in the A tier. This is because there are no mages in the Dark Element who provide a tier 3 magic attack buff. There is, however, PJ Yunyun, who is a Dark Element adventurer. She continues to have an ultimate that provides a tier 3 magic attack buff and is simply superior to any 4-star adventurers. The Fire Element, however, has a large number of options for 4-star adventurers, starting off with Original Megumin. Even though Megumin continues to perform better in the majority of the arenas, you can still get positive results in Fire Arena with the Original Megumin thanks to her matching element. In the Fire Element, more than any other, what matters most is getting off a powerful explosion from Megumin, and most runs are made or broken based on whether or not your Megumin got a crit. Another A-tier adventurer in Fire is Halloween Yunyun. She has the same tier 3 magic attack buff as other Yunyuns, and importantly, she also has an agility buff, something that is very important for mages. The other Halloween adventurer, Halloween Iris, is an adventurer that does best in the last slot on your team, once again dealing a large amount of damage with her skills, hopefully right before the arena ends. Her kit also includes a heal, but it's so small that it usually doesn't matter. Another adventurer in Fire is Snow Arue. Like Iris, she's usually in the last slot on your team and has 2 skills that deal a large amount of burst damage. For mage teams, she's probably slightly better because her skills have the ability to benefit from the buffs that mages are providing for your team. However, both of them are fairly competitive and you can get a top score with either. The final Fire adventurer in A tier is Swimsuit Rin. She's usually not quite as good as Halloween Iris because she doesn't have that team agility buff, but teams using her can still attain a top score. The next element is Wind, and we'll start off with Cafe Megumin. Like other Megumins, she can substitute for ReZero Megumin in her own element, but usually will not be as good of an option. Next we have Onsen Yunyun. Her kit is a little strange. One of her skills deals increased damage when her HP is high, The other skill deals increased damage when her HP is low. However, because both skills hit fairly hard whether or not their conditional is met, and she's the best option in Wind aside from Rin to provide that vital Tier 3 magic attack buff, she stays in the A tier. The last A tier adventurer for the Wind element is Cafe Cecily. Unlike other adventurers in the A tier, Cecily is a support unit who provides not only a heal, but that ever valuable agility buff. Cecily is held back by the fact that her ultimates are both rather wonky. While she provides a magic defense down with the first version of her ultimate, and both a physical and magic attack with her second ultimate, she's hampered by the fact that her ultimate deals physical damage, meaning that she won't benefit from the buffs that the rest of her team are providing for her. The Earth element is the odd one out as far as elements go in Konosuba Fantastic Days, in and of the fact that we not only have not yet had an arena that features the Earth element as the advantaged element since the advent of Mage meta, but it also is an element that has several strong physical adventurers who could tilt it toward physical instead of mages. This is partly because there aren't any real main damage mages in the Earth element aside from a 3-star Rin who just isn't that strong. The 3 adventurers that I have placed in the A tier are New Year Aqua, New Year Megumin, and Bunny Mitsurugi. New Year Aqua is a support unit who favors physical teams. She has an agility up and a gauge fill in her kit. Although her damage is low, because of the amount of support she can provide, she is a viable option for teams. New Year Megumin, again, often provides the same function that ReZero Megumin provides, but usually loses out to her in that role. In a strange twist, occasionally she's used not as an suicide lead, but as a main DPS in slot 4 or even slot 5, because her 2 abilities hit fairly hard against the boss. The last A-tier Earth adventurer is Bunny Mitsurugi. He may end up being meta or he may not. What he does do is provide an ult that buffs the damage of all physical units on the team, meaning that he would be vital to teams that are hoping to make physical work. The rest of his kit is fairly lackluster, but just that large buff on his ult could be enough to fuel the only physically oriented arena team. Lightning is another element with a 3-star Yunyun in the A tier, as Yunyun remains the best option for providing that ever-important Tier 3 magic attack buff to your team. The other 2 adventurers in A tier are Swimsuit Aqua and Bunny Iris. Even though they're both physical, they do have a place even on mage teams. Swimsuit Aqua has okay damage for a support, providing a small heal as well as a gauge fill. She often finds her way even into mage teams due to the power of those 2 buffs. Bunny Iris provides a slot 5 unit who can deal a large amount of damage in a short window and remains the best option to bring up the rear in Lightning. The final element we'll go over A-tier adventurers for is Water, once more leading off with Megumin, in this case Academy Megumin. Again, Megumin is usually the best option instead of Academy Megumin, but if you lack her, Academy Megumin is an acceptable choice in Water. Next up, we have Academy Yunyun. She's the best option in Water for the Tier 3 magic attack buff, and her kit is very strong. Both of her skills are single target, maximizing damage against the boss, as well as one of them providing a Tier 2 magic defense down. Is a 3-star option in Swimsuit Yunyun, but she is simply not as good as 4-star Academy Yunyun. The last A-tier adventure I'll go over is Water Arue. She's probably not as good as Valentine's Iris in a vacuum in taking up the last slot on your team. However, because Valentine's Iris is a limited adventurer who is on a banner that many people skipped, she just hasn't shown up in the meta in a major way, and Water Arue is the meta option for mage teams. In the B tier, you will find the Ulcerans. Generally, these are adventurers who are not as strong as A tier. They see less than 20% meta usage in top 1k teams. Usually, someone in a higher tier will do their job but better. Many good physical units fall here simply because mage teams are overwhelmingly dominant. I'm not going to give an exhaustive overview of each unit in B tier, instead just giving a quick rundown as none of these units are all that relevant to the meta. Kazuma and Dust generally have lackluster ults, and their kits are lacking. They won't make their way into the meta anytime soon, at least not until they receive better options. Chris, Erika, and Mitsurugi just don't fit into mage teams, even though they often have strong kits. Santa Darkness, Silo, and Water Cecily are all supports who, generally speaking, fall short of what Emilia can do. Melissa, Water Eyeless, and Rem are simply outcompeted by mages, despite the fact that they have fairly good kits. PJ Wiz suffers from having a typeless basic. As for Snow Rin, she's simply outdone by the two options that Yunyun has in water. In C tier, we have weak units who just can't compete in the meta. They're rarely, if ever, used in top meta teams. They're last-ditch options that will underperform no matter how much you invest into them, and they're completely outclassed by better options in higher tiers. Some of them were good in the past, for example, Original Aqua or Wind Aqua, but now they simply can't keep up with the meta. Last and certainly least, we have the D tier, which are utter garbage and will never see usage in Arena. Kazuma is so incredibly bad that it's baffling to consider who came up with his kit. Darkness has niche uses in EX Arena, but in regular Arena, where we're focused on damage and not defense, she simply has no place. Altogether, this results in the tier list you see on your screen, ranked from the top tier SSS meta queens all the way down to poor Darkness with Kazuma in D tier. I regularly update this tier list, and I will provide a link in the description to the Google Drive file where I maintain it. I also regularly post the updates on the Konosuba Fantastic Days subreddit, as well as on the fan Discord and the official Discord. I'll endeavor to regularly upload videos each time a new banner is released, placing new units, although I will not go as in-depth into the tier list and only go over the new units and how they have affected the meta. That's the tier list. Thanks for watching. I'd like to give a special thank you to two people. First, Enraged Koala, known as nkoala here on YouTube. His Japanese tier list is an invaluable resource for all players, and he has kindly mentored me in creating the global tier list over the past 6 months. Another thanks to Darkest Sky on Discord for his help with the production side of the video, and for his tireless efforts to give the community access to usage rate information in Arena, as well as other information related to the game. Thanks once again for watching, and I hope to provide with more updates to the Konosuba Fantastic Day tier list soon.